Hi Dina, very happy to see this set of essays. Let's take a look at what you've written here. When you send us a task one, it's really very helpful if you can include the image. Just copy and paste it into your file. This way I can refer to it in my correction. But let's see what you wrote here. It's the pie chart about the crops. So, the provided pie chart illustrates statistics about production of 6 different kinds of agricultural crops in France in the year 2017. All right, that's fine. It's a lot of information to go into one sentence, isn't it? If there was anything I would have changed here, I mean, everything is absolutely fine. There's just a lot of prepositions here about, of 6, of agriculture, in France, in here, okay? You could have maybe just made that a little more fluid. And it's really just, what we're talking about here is, you know, the difference between good grammar and like really good grammar. So I'm not sure what score you need, but that might be something to think about. Just kind of making this a little less heavy with all of those phrases. And sometimes even just getting rid of one of those prepositional phrases really just makes all the difference in the world. So let's try it a little differently just to give you an idea. The pie chart illustrates statistics about different kinds of agricultural crops produced in France in 2017. I just got one of them. I got rid of one of them. But I think it makes a little bit of a difference. Anyway, let's move on. Generally, cotton was by far the most produced crop, careful with your typing here, followed by wheat and sugar, each one making up almost 1/5 of the whole. On the other hand, rice and barley made up the lowest proportions. Among various products, the maximum amount belongs to cotton at almost 34%. Sugar and wheat stood at the second grade with 21.9 and 20% respectively, together making almost half of the chart. Barley contributed almost 1/5 of the products, which was only slightly less than sugar and wheat. Turning to the least, sugar and wheat, wait a minute. Okay. Let's see. Fine. Let me just look at your statistics so far. We have wheat and sugar, rice and barley. Then you talk about cotton, then you talk about sugar and wheat again. And then, all right, that's a little confusing. Barley was one of the least produced crops, right? And then you said it contributed almost 1/5 of the product, which was only slightly less than sugar and wheat. Now, that confuses me. What are you telling me? I'm not really sure what that sentence means. Which are the products that were only slightly less than sugar and wheat? It's just a little vague, okay? Anyway, let's look at the rest of it. Turning to the least produced kind of goods, corn with 1.7% was the smallest portion. Rice was the second least produced, equaling 3.5%. In other words, the two mentioned crops, careful, made up less than 6% of the whole graph altogether. Okay, so you mentioned everything you're supposed to mention. You got, from what I could see here, just over 150 words, okay? And that's difficult to do with this one because there's really not a lot of information, okay? And I personally find that these task ones that have little information are more difficult to do than some of the ones that have a lot of information. But you still have to find ways to extend and to kind of make certain connections in the data that you see here, okay? So let's talk a little bit about your structure. My understanding is that this is your overview. Is that correct? I know you can't answer me, but it would be helpful if you could. So this is what I understood to be your overview. What made it really rather strange was the placement of it, okay? So where does the overview usually go? Usually it goes right after your introduction. Some people put it at the very end as a conclusion. I'm personally a fan of the first technique, putting it right after the introduction. Okay, there are a lot of reasons for that, which I'm happy to get into at some other point. And that's what you did, but you put it with your detail paragraph, which then makes the examiner think, okay, well, is this part of the details or is this actually an overview? So there are a couple of ways to make very clear that this is your overview. First of all, you can attach it to the paragraph with the introduction, or you can make this its own paragraph and then make the overview its own paragraph, and then have your detailed paragraphs. Okay, but you do want to make absolutely clear that, hey folks, this is my overview. All right, I'm completely aware of what I'm doing. This is what it is. And that's really helpful, because otherwise an examiner could say, well, there is no overview here. It's just detail. All right, so you want to be careful about that. Okay, so let's talk about this. You talked about cotton here. You didn't give any data. That was good. That's what you're supposed to do. Now here's where you probably should have started your new paragraph with among. You talked about cotton, and then you gave detail for sugar and wheat, okay, and that was fine. You also mentioned that it made up half the chart. You could have done some other sort of connections here. You could have said that together they made up more than cotton alone, or you also could have said that cotton made up 1/3 of the pie chart, which would have worked, because then you said that these two made up almost half. So you could have just developed a touch more. Okay. As I already told you, this sentence really didn't make a lot of sense to me. You said that barley contributed almost 1/5 of the products, which were only slightly less than that was really confusing to me. I didn't understand what that meant. I think you were trying to say that I'm not really sure what you're trying to say. I really don't know, I'm afraid. Maybe that it rounded up the top 4, and then it was just around. It was really confusing. But I do think that you should have said something a little more. If I remember correctly, isn't barley around 18%? If that is correct, you could have said a lot of things about this. You could have said that barley's 18% was half of cotton, almost, really, okay? There were a lot of things you could have said, but that was one way to connect it back to that top producing crop. Let's see. This was okay except for the smallest portions. That was a little awkward. So yeah, your organization was good. You just needed to extend. You needed to extend these points a little bit more to make the connections between them a little clearer. But I thought you did a nice job overall. All right, so I want to move into your task 2, which is about employees staying at the same job or leaving jobs. All right, so let's see what you said. While there are advocates of one job for a lifetime, some individuals prefer to change their career. Careful, carrier is a totally different word. You want career, which is C-A-R-E-E-R, okay? Here it is, yeah, C-A-R-E-E-R. Once in a while. There are both benefits and drawbacks for mentioned approaches. I believe, with some exceptions, generally altering job can bring benefits which outweigh its negative points. Okay, it's fine. I think there were more fluid ways of expressing this idea. So this was fine with the spelling, with the exception of the spelling mistake. Here's what I suggest. There are both benefits and drawbacks for the mentioned approach. Now, look what's wrong with this. Which mentioned approach? Both of them, you mean? There's benefits and drawbacks to both. So why don't you say that instead? So there are benefits. Let's do it like this. There are benefits and drawbacks to both approaches, yet I believe, with some exceptions, generally changing jobs can bring benefits which outweigh its negative points. I think that makes such a stronger sentence, okay? So you can try altering it like that. All right, let's move on. To be loyal to one company can bring a sense of job safety. In this competitive world and widespread unemployment, many people prefer to settle for a gradual progress and an average but guaranteed income to bear the overwhelming stress of becoming jobless. That's lovely. That's a really nice sentence. Maintaining the same position will be associated with perks, annual increments, and fringe benefits such as pension. Although this situation can become usual and boring after a while. All right, here you lost it because although can't just be one clause. And by clause, I mean one subject and verb. It has to be attached to another clause. So here, these two sentences should have been linked together, and let's try it like that. Maintaining the same position will be associated with perks, annual increments, and fringe benefits such as pension, comma, although this situation can become usual and boring after a while. Moreover, the fast-paced development of technology, upgrading systems, I think that's what you mean, can hold the risk of being redundant. I don't understand that. Taking many postmen losing their job after innovation of email. All right, I think I know what you're trying to say, but it's not really precise in terms of language. So let's try to clean that up a little bit. Okay. Moreover, given the fast-paced development of technology, upgrading systems can hold the risk of making people redundant. Full stop. For example, many postal workers, don't say men because it feels a little sexist. Many postal workers lost their job after the invention of email. Okay? Moreover, I already said that, sorry. However, mastering new skills by on-the-job training can prevent such consequences. The chance of reaching high positions such as manager, mentor, or chief executive is much higher by working for long periods in the same firm. In other words, being an expert, well-known, and trustworthy are characteristics essential for promotion which can be achieved by working years for the company. Okay, so check it out. You've actually got a really long essay in general. All right, it's 369 words, which is not a problem in and of itself, but we have to make sure that your paragraphs are coherent and cohesive. So this paragraph is clearly talking about staying in one job, right? And it's a rather developed paragraph. You've talked quite a bit about it. So let's see what you're saying here. What's the central idea? You say that people prefer to stay in one job because they get perks, they get fringe benefits, and so forth. Then you tell us that, but it gets boring. Then you tell us that because of technology, some people become redundant, but if you stay on the new job, you can prevent this from happening. And then you talk about the chance of reaching high positions is much higher by working in long positions in the same firm. Okay, so I understood a lot of it, but to be honest with you, I don't understand this part. Like, I don't understand what that has to do with anything. How is on-the-job training and becoming redundant because of new technology related to everything else you're saying? So that's where you kind of lost me in terms of the progression of your ideas. And progression of ideas is something that's discussed in coherence and cohesion when we're scoring for that section. So presumably you were talking about the positives of staying in one job here. But then, like I said, this really baffled me, so I didn't know what you were talking about. And then here also, you said the situation can become usual and boring after a while. All of a sudden, you're talking about the negatives. I don't think this approach is effective. Remember how important it is to have one central idea in each of your paragraphs, okay? And when we say central idea, we don't just mean, okay, now I'm going to discuss staying in the same job, and I'm going to tell you everything about it. You can't do that. All right, what you can do instead is a couple of different things. You excuse me. You can talk about just the positives of this, and that would have been okay. Or you could, although this is a huge risk, spend half of the paragraph talking about the positives and then spend the other half talking about the negatives. But I think this is a real risk that I really wouldn't undertake. All right, so try to stick to just one idea, meaning one general theme, one central idea, okay? Just like, for example, the positives of staying in one job for your whole life. All right, so let's talk about this. On the other hand, changing jobs, especially in computer-based professions, can make a significant success for employees. For instance, if people such here did not, because we never write contractions in IELTS essays, okay? Did not change their previous positions, we would not have, you don't mean intentional, I think you mean international. So huge international companies such as Apple, and Apple should be capitalized. The latter fact holds true for facing totally new technologies like cryptocurrency, which many IT professionals made a fortune out of. Full stop. All right, this is irrelevant. All right, this does not help your argument. This does not relate to the essay at hand. It belongs somewhere totally different, okay? Excuse me. All right, so let's move on. Job hopping, though, may show instability of a job seeker for some employers. 2. Okay, fine. Added to this, the nature of some careers, spelled wrong again, is unchangeable to some extent, such as for physicians and nurses, for example. The last but not least variable is the personality of individuals. Some people are less risk-taking and adventurous, O-U-S, for whom facing new situations, even ideal ones, could be challenging and mentally pressing. To recapitulate, altering jobs, under many circumstances, can be more beneficial than sticking to a lifetime one. However, there are exceptions regarding personality and career nature. Although keeping balance and considering, all right, again, that should have been attached to the previous sentence. Keeping balance and considering reasonable frequency of it is a paramount factor. All right, so like I said, it's a very it's a very developed essay. All right, you didn't stick to just 250 words, and that's a good thing, okay? It's good to extend your ideas as much as you can. But what I really feel is that this is lacking structure. It's lacking a structured, kind of well-organized kind of basic skeleton of an essay, okay, where you've got a lot of ideas, and that's great, because I got to tell you, how many people struggle with ideas is like mind-boggling. A lot of people don't have ideas. You do have ideas, but what you need to really do here is you need to just pick 2 that belong to the same central idea and then develop those. Okay, develop them well, and then do the same thing in the second paragraph. So let's look at this, for example. You talked here about the perks of staying in the same job. So that's one thing that you could say is a positive of staying at the same job. And then another positive of staying on the same job is the opportunity to reach high positions. Okay, so this is what we mean by having one central idea in each of your paragraphs. Okay, so that's what I want you to work on a little bit. It's well done in many, many, many respects. Lots of vocabulary, lots of grammar happening, lots of really good things. Want you to work on some of the things that we've talked about in this correction. Okay, so let's see, did we look at this? Yes, we did. All right, so go ahead and correct these, and let's see more work from you. Okay, you're on the right track, so good luck to you.